Not every crash tells its full story on race day. Sometimes it takes the data, the inspections, and the official statements before you truly understand what happened. That is exactly the case here, because NASCAR has now confirmed what safety officials, drivers, and fans all suspected the moment they saw the replay, and the findings go far beyond what anyone expected. And on top of that, the driver involved just delivered news that stopped the NASCAR world cold. This is a story about violence, toughness, and the technology that made sure we are still talking about a championship contender and not something far worse. On lap 148 of the FireKeepers Casino 400 at Michigan International Speedway, everything was moving exactly as you would expect a high-speed intermediate track race to move. Christopher Bell piloting the no. 20 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota was locked in a serious battle near the front of the field during the final stage. Chase Elliott in the no. 9 Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet was right alongside him, both drivers pushing hard on fresh tires following a restart. Then, in a matter of seconds, the entire complexion of the race and Bell's entire season changed violently. Chase Elliott got loose underneath Bell and his no. 9 Chevrolet slid directly up the track and into the left side door of Bell's Toyota. The contact was immediate and brutal. Bell's car was sent rocketing toward the outside retaining wall in turn 4 at close to 200 miles per hour. The impact was violent enough that Bell's number 20 Toyota erupted in flames at the rear of the car upon contact. Elliott's no. 9 Chevrolet then slid back down the track and struck an inside tire barrier as well. Both cars were done for the day. What happened next said a great deal about both drivers as people. Both Bell and Elliott were able to climb out of their cars under their own power. Before either of them was loaded into an ambulance for the ride to the infield care center, Elliott walked directly over to Bell. The two shared an embrace on the track, and Elliott wasted no time taking responsibility. "It was totally my fault. I feel really bad for Bell. Just taking him out," Elliott said, after being evaluated and released from the care center. "It was a huge hit. Huge hit for him. Pretty big hit for me too. I knew that when it happened that it was, when you're watching the wall come that quick, it's gonna be large." Elliott added that as soon as he's realized he was committed to the slide, it hooked up and sent Bell into the wall hard. He said his only priority in that moment was making sure Bell was all right. Bell spent nearly an hour inside the infield care center. He was eventually evaluated and released, but he declined all interview requests that afternoon. The severity of the impact was obvious to everyone watching. Joe Gibbs, the owner of Joe Gibbs Racing, addressed reporters after the race, a race that JGR teammate Denny Hamlin had just won, and confirmed that Bell was dealing with injuries. Gibbs stated that Bell's wrist and ankle were both being evaluated and that they would have to wait through the week for a full assessment. Bell then boarded the JGR team plane and returned home to North Carolina, where the real answers began to emerge. X-rays confirmed a fractured left wrist. That was the official diagnosis after Bell returned home and underwent further medical evaluation. On Tuesday evening, Joe Gibbs Racing released an official statement confirming the injury and providing an update on Bell's status going forward. The statement read, "Christopher Bell suffered a fractured left wrist after an accident on lap 148 of Sunday's NASCAR Cup Series race at Michigan International Speedway after being evaluated and released from the infield care center. Bell returned home to North Carolina where X-rays confirmed the fracture. Bell has been cleared and will be behind the wheel of the no. 20 Toyota Camry XSE this weekend at Pocono Raceway." Bell himself then posted on X, addressing the NASCAR community directly. "Thank you to each and everyone who reached out to check on me. I truly feel the love," Bell wrote. "I'm grateful for my team of doctors, JGR, NASCAR, and all of the previous drivers who have helped pave the way for the safety standards in our sport. See you in Pocono." That statement told fans everything they needed to know about where Bell's mindset was. A fractured wrist? The week after one of the most violent crashes of the season, and he was already focused on getting back behind the wheel. Now here is where the story takes on a completely different dimension. Because while Bell was recovering and preparing to race again, NASCAR was running its own investigation into exactly what happened at Michigan. And the findings that came out of that investigation are what elevated this story from a serious crash to something genuinely historic in the context of modern NASCAR. On the latest episode of the Hauler Talk podcast, Mike Ford, NASCAR Vice President of Racing Communications, made an official confirmation that immediately spread across the entire motorsports world. Christopher Bell's crash at Michigan International Speedway produced the highest Delta V measurement ever recorded in the next-gen era. The next-gen car was introduced in 2022 and represents the 7th generation of the Cup Series race car. Since its debut, NASCAR has tracked crash data across super speedways, intermediates, road courses, and short tracks. Bell's impact at Michigan surpassed every single one of them. Ford explained exactly what Delta V measures and why it matters. Delta V is the measure of speed lost in an incident, Ford said on the podcast. So if you're going 200 miles per hour, and then all of a sudden you come to a stop because you hit a wall and scrub off X amount of speed, that difference is what the Delta V is. I can't give out the Delta V number for Bell. That data is proprietary in a way. We share that with the team and the driver, and that's their data to do with what they want. But we can confirm that it was the largest number we've seen in the next-gen era. That distinction matters. Delta V is not simply measuring peak force at the moment of contact. It measures the total change in velocity throughout the entire impact sequence, which makes it a far more complete picture of crash severity and injury risk. The confirmation from Ford was significant on its own. But then came the statement from Matt Harper, NASCAR's Managing Director of Safety Systems at the NASCAR Research and Development Center. Harper, who has been with NASCAR since 2015, reviewed the crash data remotely from North Carolina and provided an assessment that extended the record well, beyond just the next-gen era. According to Ford, Harper said it was the hardest hit he has seen and has looked at from a data perspective since he joined NASCAR. More than a decade of crash data, more than a decade of incidents, and Bell's impact at Michigan sat at the top of all of it. NASCAR will not be releasing Bell's specific Delta V number publicly. The organization treats that information as proprietary data shared exclusively with the driver and the team. Bell and Joe Gibbs Racing could choose to release the number if they wanted to. As of now, neither has done so. The physical evidence at the track itself reinforced everything the data was showing. Bell's impact was so violent that it damaged the safer barrier itself. Repair crews had to bring welding equipment onto the track surface to fix the wall before racing could safely continue. The red flag period lasted 20 minutes and 31 seconds, so while that work was completed. Damage of that level to a safer barrier is exceptionally rare and speaks directly to the magnitude of the forces involved in this crash. Bell's no. 20 Toyota was transported back to the Joe Gibbs Racing facility in Huntersville, North Carolina, where NASCAR conducted a full follow-up inspection on Monday morning. That followed the initial evaluation that officials had already conducted in the garage immediately after the race. During those inspections, officials performed visual assessments, photographed the vehicle thoroughly, and downloaded data from the incident data recorder. Those photos and data were uploaded to a server, and Harper began reviewing them within 5 minutes of receiving them, conducting his initial remote assessment from North Carolina before the full, in-person inspection the following day. The area that received the most focused attention from NASCAR safety team was Bell's head surround foam, the padding surrounding the driver's head inside the cockpit. Ford addressed this directly on the podcast. A big priority is being put around the head surround foam, Ford said. We keep updating this part of the rulebook as we learn more and more. The thickness of the head surround is so important. And because we were pleased with how the head surround supported Christopher in this incident, we did a lot of measurements of the type of foam he used, the softness, and the thickness. We want to see, hey, is this sort of the magic number? Is this something that other drivers may want to look at? Because this was the biggest hit we've ever seen in the next-gen era, and by and large, Christopher came out of it pretty well. So that's one of the things we'll be studying as we move forward. That statement signals that Bell's crash data and safety setup are now being evaluated as a potential benchmark for future cockpit protection. Standards across the entire Cup Series garage. The reaction from inside the garage on race day reflected just how alarming the crash was in real time. Bubba Wallace was running just behind the incident when it unfolded and had a direct view of the impact. Over his team radio, Wallace said, "Please tell me that guy is all right." After a few moments of silence, he followed up, "That was the scariest hit I've ever seen." That is a significant statement from a driver who has competed at the highest level of NASCAR for years and has witnessed countless crashes. Dale Earnhardt Jr. was part of the broadcast coverage and offered perspective on what Bell and his fellow competitors were processing in the moments after the crash. They now, all of these drivers, particularly those ones that were up front, that were right there around this accident, have to compartmentalize that fear or that knowledge of that, Earnhardt said. And now I've got to go out here and continue to put myself in that situation and at that risk. It's incredible. I think we kind of forget about that sometimes, but they have to ignore a lot of trauma and a lot of dangers and fears to go out there and risk lives and take chances that a lot of us aren't willing to take. Josh Berry also weighed in after the crash data became public. It broke the wall. It was a huge hit, but in the end, it does say a lot about the safety advances that NASCAR has made, Berry said. Not only throughout the process of the next-gen car, but also just over the last couple decades. You look at safer barriers and Hans devices and things that have come along. Man, it's just amazing the progress that's been made. That progress is exactly what allowed Christopher Bell to walk away from the hardest recorded impact of the next-gen era with a fractured wrist. Serious, but manageable enough that he is cleared to compete the following weekend. Now, the championship math makes Bell's decision to race at Pocono even more critical to understand. Bell entered the Michigan race 7th in the Cup Series point standings. His 31st place DNF at Michigan cost him 3 positions, dropping him to 10th in the championship standings. With the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs on the horizon, every single race matters. Bell has 2 top 5s, 3 top 10s, and a best finish of 4th achieved twice in 2020, 21, and 2022 across 8 career starts at Pocono Raceway. The track is familiar to him, but competing there with a fractured wrist presents a serious physical challenge. Pocono's unique triangular layout demands constant steering adjustments, heavy physical input throughout the entire race distance, and sustained concentration at high speed. Even healthy drivers consistently describe Pocono as one of the more physically demanding tracks on the schedule. What this entire story ultimately reflects is where NASCAR stands as a sport in 2026. The next-gen car, combined with safer barriers, Hans devices, advanced restraint systems, and continuous improvements to head surround foam produced an outcome where a driver survived the hardest recorded impact in over a decade of data and is cleared to return to competition less than a week later. Christopher Bell fractured his left wrist in a crash that damaged the wall, triggered a 20-minute red flag, and set a data record that NASCAR's own safety officials have never seen surpassed, and 6 days later, he will be behind the wheel of the 20 JGR Toyota at Pocono Raceway, still fighting for a championship.